Hi there, my name is Violet. I'm a dietetic intern at the Lynnwood Food Bank, and today we're going to be making some no-bake granola bars. These are perfect for getting the kids involved. There's no heat required. There is a little bit of cutting. If you have a food processor at home, feel free to use that. I'll also share some tips on how to skip that cutting process altogether. These are great for switching up with whatever ingredients you have. We have seeds today and nuts and then dried fruit, and you can switch those out with whatever you have on hand. And so these are packed full of fiber, fats, and also have a great source of iron in there as well. So today we will start with our oats here. We have 1 cup and 2/3 cup of oats. So I'm using just regular old-fashioned oats. If you can, or if you already have the quick oats, you will not need to cut them. They're already processed a little bit, but I have regular old-fashioned oats, so I'm just going to pour these on my cutting board kind of half at a time here and cut them to reduce the size. And you can just cut across, going kind of slow. They like to jump around a little bit. And not too much. You don't want them to be as fine as a flour, but just enough to break them up a little bit so that they can absorb a little bit more liquid. So once those are cut, I'll go ahead and put them in my dry ingredients bowl here, as carefully as I can without spilling too much. And so oats are a great source of fiber and fat, help to keep a really filling bar. And then we'll just add the other half here and just a really quick cut again, just to kind of break it up. All right. And we will be doing the same thing with, we have walnuts today. You can use any nuts that you have at home. You can use pecans, almonds, whatever it is that you have on hand. When you're at the store, you have the option to buy them whole, roasted. I personally prefer the raw over the roasted version, but that's really just a flavor preference. If you'd like, you can buy them pre-chopped, save you a little bit of time. Mine are whole today, so we're gonna be cutting those up. And for our walnuts, it'll be just 1 cup today. All right. So now we'll put our walnuts down here. And so if you're using your quick cut oats or buying chopped walnuts, then there's no cutting needed in this recipe so far. But this is something, if you want to teach knife skills to your children, supervise, there's still no heat required in this recipe. So it's a great one to get the kids involved. And when we have our kids cook with us, they're more inclined to eat what they've made because they tend to be pretty proud of it. So it's a great way to introduce them to new foods as well. Okay, once you have your cup of walnuts or whichever nuts you're using all cut up, you can add that to your big bowl with your dry ingredients, joining the oats over there. And then we'll move on to our pepitas. So pepitas, it's not a common word that you use all the time, but pepitas are just pumpkin seeds. So they're that green color, if you can see there. Pepitas are that inside of the pumpkin seed. They are have a really good earthy flavor to them, and they are a fantastic source of iron and a vegetable source of protein. So we're just going to cut these up a little to reduce their size. And you could keep them whole if you'd like, if you want to skip cutting in this recipe. It just adds a little bit of a different texture. Perfect. And we're using just 1/3 cup of these pepita seeds. All right. And then we're just going to add these to our dry ingredients. And then we will move on to our dried fruit. Today I'm using raisins. You can use dried cranberries, dried cherries, whatever it is that you prefer. Just try to buy the kind that doesn't have any added sugar and it's just the whole fruit itself. We are adding half a cup of honey later on, so you don't want these bars to be too sweet. So we're doing 2/3 cups of whatever your dried fruit is. You can throw that into your dried ingredient bowl. Okay. And then next we'll move on to our seed or nut butter. So you can use peanut butter if that's something that you have. I will be using sunflower butter today, but whichever nut or seed butter you prefer, try your best to either get the salted kind for this recipe, or if you're using an unsalted version, which is great for everyday use, just add a half a teaspoon of salt to this recipe. But I have the salted version here, so I'll add that to my wet ingredients bowl. And this is just 1 full cup here. You can use a spatula for these stickier ingredients. But sunflower butter is a great source of protein and fat. Peanut butter is a great source of fat to help these bars keep you full for longer, and it makes it very satisfying, provides a wonderful texture. Perfect. And then we'll be moving on to our honey. So honey is obviously very sticky. It is a great sweetener, but it is very sweet. So half a cup makes these bars pretty sweet. So I'm gonna do a little bit under half a cup, but it's really sticky. So when you're measuring, a tip is to take a little bit of olive oil on your fingertip, rub it around in there. I've already done that on this measuring cup here, and it just makes that honey slide out a lot easier, so you're not having to scoop it out. And so we'll tap our honey down here and just start filling it up. And then when that oil coats the sides, it just makes it slide out a lot easier. I'll go right into our other wet ingredients here. 1 more. And like I said, I'm doing a little bit under half a cup because honey tends to be pretty sweet. If you're using honey in place of regular table cane sugar in a recipe, it's always best to scale down just a little bit because it tends to be sweeter than that regular cane sugar. Perfect. Okay. And then next we will add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract right into our wet ingredients. This is half a teaspoon here, so I'm doing this 3 times. And then we will add a full teaspoon of cinnamon to our dry ingredients. Okay, and to mix up those dry ingredients, you can just use a fork or a spoon, just enough to get them incorporated. Make sure if you're using raisins or cranberries, they tend to stick to each other a little bit, so try to break them up. Make sure you're not getting any big clumps in your bars. And for kids, this is a great one to just use your hands, or even if you're an adult, you can wake up that kid inside you as well. But sometimes it's fun to be a little bit messy with their food. And so we'll mix that up and set it aside. And then we'll mix together our wet ingredients. You can use a fork or a whisk. I find a fork a little bit easier when it's this smaller amount. Start mixing pretty slow, otherwise you might get splashed with a little bit of vanilla. And then you just want to mix these until you don't see any ribbons of different colors anymore, knowing that it's all incorporated, all cohesive. That honey will make it pretty sticky. Now for this next part, you may need to help your kiddos out. It requires a little bit of elbow grease. So I'm going to use my spatula to scoop this out and put it into my dry ingredients. And just plop that right in. Perfect. Make sure you get all of it in there. Spatula is best to help scrape the sides of your container. Perfect. At this point, your mixture should look like this. All of your ingredients are incorporated, and then your wet ingredients all look like one color. There's no ribbons of honey, and that's how you know it's time to mix. You can see here with my mixture, when I lift out a piece, there isn't really any dry oats on the bottom, and that's how you know it's ready and that it's all incorporated. Okay, now that we have it all incorporated, we are going to clear some space here, and we'll bring over our pan. So for forming these bars, you can use whichever pan you prefer. Just know that the bigger the pan that you use, the shallower that these bars will be. So if you want a bit of a thicker bar, you can use a smaller pan. I'm using an 8 by 8 inch pan, square pan here. And then I'm just using a piece of parchment paper that goes across the bottom, just enough so you have a little hanging over each side. This way, when you form your bars, refrigerate them, you can just pull this out and it'll help you get those bars out. And so we'll just pour that mixture. It's okay if it's not sticking together just quite yet. Get any extras off your spatula here. And then for this part, you can push down with your spatula or use your hands. It might be a little sticky. And this is a part that I'm sure the kids would love to get involved with, getting their hands messy again, and kind of playing around. And once you have it evenly dispersed, what we're going to do is make it so that there's no air pockets, and this is a really dense, delicious bar. So next we will grab, you can use a glass that you have at home. I'm using a little ramekin here. You can just press down on top. If you're finding that it's getting a little too sticky and it's sticking to the bottom a lot, then you can just use a piece of plastic wrap or more parchment paper right on the bottom of your glass there so it's not sticking. And you just press down completely, getting those edges down, making sure that it's really firm. Okay, and then once you're done pressing, it should all be in there really well. You're gonna cover this either with more parchment paper or plastic wrap. We're gonna pop it in the fridge. You can have it in there for about an hour or best overnight so that those oats can really soak up whatever liquid is in there to make this a really delicious bar. So you see when they come out, you have your bars here. You can slice your loaf into whatever sizes or shapes you prefer. Might be fun to even do some cookie cutter shapes with your kids. And then these will store in the fridge or the freezer. For the freezer, they will be lasting up for a month or so, and you can just wrap them individually in parchment paper or in wax paper and stick them in the fridge like that. They're delicious, and I hope you get to try this at home.